Hey guys, welcome to another episode with your girl, with your coach, with your fabulous, badass money coach. How are you guys doing today? I don't know. I'm doing well. I get excited every time I get a chance to spend time with you guys. Virtually, I know I cannot see you. You can see me, but I want you to make sure, by the way, if you've been listening to this episodes, listening to my podcast, I want to hear from you. I want you to take some time and share a review with me if you've loved what I'm talking about. If there are any questions, I want you to get in touch with me as well and let me know how I can support you on this journey to creating your own rich life. But my point, though, is that every single time I sit down and I think about the messages that I'm getting about what people are doing as a result of listening to this podcast, listening to my vlogs, learning all things money, and creating their own rich life for themselves, I get super duper excited. So I want to say thank you for spending time with me because I do love having you here. I love hanging out with you, and let's get rich together. So, the episode I'm going to be talking to you guys about today is, of course, going to be fabulously fun. And so we're going to be talking about ideal wealthy life. What is the ideal wealthy life? But before I go into details with it, I wanted to share with you how this actually came about. As you guys know, I coach women physicians through my 8 weeks money school for badass women physicians like you and I. And the whole goal is that I teach women sort of like the framework of the pillars of creating a rich life. And those are things we can talk about together. But today I wanted to just speak about what exactly constitute a wealthy life. And the reason why this is important is this. A lot of my clients are people that are amazing. Yes, you as well. They are women that care about the world. They're women that want to leave an impact in the world. They are exactly the kind of people that you want to put money into their hands, right? However, there's a lot of stuff that we've learned, a lot of unconscious things from just existing in this world about what money should look like, about what rich life should look like, about what should look like. And honestly, I make sure that I check myself and I'm not judgmental about how people choose to or not spend their money. However, when the examples that we're seeing, the examples that's sticking in our brains about what wealth or money should look like are not people that we're inspired to be, then we need to fix that problem, right? We need to fix that ish. And a lot of times when I think about how I live my life, how I've created MoneyFit MD, and what I inspire from MoneyFit MD to continue to evolve into, it's about really helping women create this rich life that they want, the rich life that they want to see the world becoming to. So that's kind of what spurned this into being. And in fact, one of my fabulous clients said this to me when we started working together. She said, Latifah, the reason why I reached out to you is because I know that all money people are assholes. Her words, not mine. But I reached out to you because I know you're not an asshole, right? And again, that leads to the examples of what we're seeing, the examples that we're associating with money. But when my friends, when the amazing docs that I know that are the craziest givers, humanitarians, changing the world, think that the fact that they want to change the world means they should not have money, means that they should sacrifice themselves, then we have a problem. So, for all those women out there that are killing it, changing the world, creating the kind of future that we want to see, the kind of future world that we want to create for our future generations, this podcast episode is for you. So, what I'm going to do is I'm going to be sharing the three components of your ideal rich life, your ideal wealthy life. And yes, there's semantics. You can use rich, you can use wealthy, whatever you choose. But the bottom line is there are three components that are so essential in terms of helping us live that life that we want so that we don't live a life of regret, so we can build the kind of life that we want and dream about. So, on that note, I'm going to share the three things. The first one is going to be impact. What exactly do I mean by impact? So the way the way that I think about it is I think of, all right, so I'm not a huge fan of superhero movies at baseline. However, over the last couple of years, my husband and some of my closest friends have done their best to try and bring me to the other side, which is where I maybe enjoy some superhero movies. So I like Iron Man, I like the Avengers series. Those are my things, right? The Avengers. Those are now my things. 5 years ago, 7 years ago, I would literally fall asleep in the middle of watching those things. But now I actually enjoy some of them. There has to be depth to it. It can't just be someone like trying to kill everybody and destroying the world for the sake of it. There has to be some, some points to it. There has to be maybe a little hint of romance to it. Yes, now we can have a conversation. But anyways, when I think about impact, I think about those superhero movies and someone coming from like space or whatever other planet they exist in. I know I cannot believe I'm using superheroes as an analogy on my podcast. That is so not my baseline. But hey, we're all evolving. That's who I am now, because I guess I'm now someone that uses superheroes as analogies. Anyway, so I just picture like someone coming to Earth and with this resounding power and authority, and impact is sort of like the effect that those things that are close to them or neighboring to them feel. So when I think about impact, that's what comes to mind. So it's just like that influence that you have on me or we have on each other. And for a moment, I want us to like ignore rules, right? Because when we think about impact, suddenly we start to like build those things that is the result of the, what people have made us think that impact should look like or feel like. I want you to go back in your mind to your personal statements that you wrote in medical school. I always tell people, if you ever want to be inspired, if you ever want to be like amazed, just go ahead and read like a personal statement. You would be inspired, I'm telling you. So impact is what you wrote about when you talked about why you want to become a physician. We talk a lot about the impact that we want to play. I mean, I am not that, I don't know, 19, 20, 21-year-old girl anymore. Things have evolved. But the whole point is still the fact that when we talk about the reason why we're inspired, it's because of the impact we want to make. And in fact, I go back to when I was a resident, I wrote my personal statement, and my chair, who is unfortunately now late and I absolutely still love and adore, read a bunch of our personal statement or highlights from it. And he wrote mine. And one of the impacts I talked about is what it means to be a physician and a healer. And that sometimes that means diagnosing and treating and curing. And other times it's just getting someone a cup of water and helping them, wipe their brows and just providing palliation in those moments that is most needed. And that is what a healer could be. So the impact that I wanted to play in my role as a physician was being a healer. That statement came back to haunt me so many times when I was a resident, overworked, underpaid intern resident, working 80 hours a week. And you're like so exhausted, right? You're trying to make it through the day, trying to make it through the hours you're trying to do. And someone's like, "Can I get a cup of water?" And I'm like, "Oh my goodness, I'm exhausted. I have to like see more patients. I have to do more notes. I have to order tests. I have to go do like life-saving stuff." But then I would pause because I remembered the fact that I talked about my impact. And this right here is the impact that I want to make. So those are just examples for you. But in terms of like creating a wealthy life is one that has impact. And you get to decide what that impact looks like. It's going to be different today versus tomorrow versus 10 years from now versus 20 years ago. And the goal is that we need to be open to the idea of who we're continuing to grow into, because the more you grow, the more the impact you're going to have is going to vary. And that impact could be at home with your kids. That impact could be on a national level where you're the president of organizations. That impact could be how you spend your money, how you earn your money. Like impact can be so multi-directional, multifaceted, that I want us to make sure that we're not getting ourselves stuck in the past and what the past rules of what impact is, right? So impact can be the silence of your home. Literally, can be the one-on-one interactions we're having with our patients, can be where we're spending our money in terms of where we're investing our money, the kind of landlord you and I want to be, the kind of investments we want to invest our money into, like what is the impact that we have? And again, go back to that picture that I showed about the superhero coming to Earth and like, boom, what is that impact? That can literally be in your living room on a small scale or on a large scale. All right. So impact, that's number one. Number two is legacy. Legacy. So when I think about the definition of legacy, I think the Webster's Dictionary defined it as anything that is handed down from the past, right? from your ancestors, from your predecessors, and also you are someone else's ancestor. You're someone else's predecessor. So it's sort of like talking about what has been passed on to us and what we are going to pass on to future generation. The kind of world we want to be, the kind of world we want to see, the kind of existence we want to see. So when we talk about things like generational wealth, that is a legacy, but that's just one piece of the legacy. There is generational wealth, there's generational thoughts, there's generational habits, there is the small scale, again, the small unit of what you're doing in your family, but there's a large scale of what we want to create in the world, the environmental changes we want to make, right? So just talking about legacy, the kind of impact we want, the kind of world we want to create, the kind of training we want the world to inherit. Like we talk about studies, right? We are scientists. Most of us that are watching this are scientists or listening to this. So when we talk about the research studies we're doing, those are all part of legacies, right? Because what we have today in science, what we have today in our knowledge is the existence and the result of legacy that's been passed on, the result of clinical studies that have been done by researchers. And we get to create that legacy. I'll give you an example of this. So as you probably know, we invest in real estate. And for us, this is where impact slash legacy sort of like comes together. So when we were trying to talk about the investments we wanted to make, the kind of landlord we wanted to be, we had to decide what kind of legacy did we want? What kind of legacy did we want for our kids in terms of what home ownership should look like, right? What kind of impact do we want to have on the kind of landlord we want to look like? So those are ways that your investment and your wealth building is not separate from impact. It's not separate from legacy. These are all intertwined together. When I think about what we do here in MoneyFitMD, we are helping women physicians create their own rich life. What does that mean? We are helping you create that now, but we want you to create that life of impact where you're making changes. We want you to create that legacy. So for me, MoneyFitMD is part of my legacy, but it's also part of how I'm impacting right now. Because the things that I'm doing, it's a snowball effect, right? I get to be part of your success. You get to be part of someone else's success. And guess what we're doing? We're going to create a pipeline where we're redefining wealth, where we're redefining what money should look like, what network should look like, what a landlord should look like, what investment should look like, what professional should look like, right? So hopefully you get what I'm dropping, right? We get to decide in our courageous self, at our highest level, our highest concept of our badassery, what we want all that to look like. So that is what legacy is, all right? So we talked about impact, we talked about legacy, and the third, which is also super important, is creating that rich life and existence, right? And you get to choose what richness means for you. In fact, one of my friends who also was part of my 8 weeks money school, she called me a couple of weeks ago and she was talking about how they wanted to buy a van. They wanted to buy a van that they could use for camping. And she was like, I don't know if this is the right investment or not. So we talked about the numbers. We talked about, separating the facts from fiction. We want the numbers to speak. I don't want her to invest in or buy things that was going to be hurting of her big picture. But I asked her what her definition of a rich life was. And for her, it's literally being able to sit down with her kids. It's being able to enjoy a cup of coffee at their camping sites, driving to the water, driving to the beach, and oh my goodness, the memories they've created has no price tag you can attach to it. So essentially, my point is we all get to define for ourselves what a rich life is. And what ends up happening is that a lot of times we judge ourselves and we judge others about how they're choosing to spend their time, how they're choosing to spend their money, how they're choosing to spend their relationships. And the goal is not to fit in any one size fits all. The goal is not to fit in your definition or my definition. The goal is to help us all find what that definition is. Like, I may think working 70 hours is good, even though that is not good for anybody, right? But you get to define what that looks like. Is it 0.7 FTE? What will it take for you to go down to that? Is it creating your own practice? Is it changing the setting that you work in? Is it diversifying your source of income? Is it taking a vacation every once in 3 months? Is it taking a micro vacation every month? Like, you get to define what a rich life is. Is it literally sitting down in the backyard, in the hammock, like me, with my cup of coffee, watching my kids do amazing stuff around me? Like, what is your definition of a rich life? What is that? And you get to choose. And again, when you ask 10 people, how much does it take? How much in dollars does it mean? Like, at what number do you define that richness? That number for you may have been different 20 years ago, right? It may be different now. It probably will be different in 20 years. The point is that the actual number is not what will define it for you. It's a constellation of your thoughts about the number, the experiences that you are creating, the things that you're spending your time on, the things you're spending your resources on. Those are what defines your rich life. And when I work with my clients, I make sure I bring them down to this area, because ultimately, I don't want you to suffer now just so that you can have this imaginary definition of retirement in 40, 30, whatever years from now. You can create a rich life right now. You can create it. And we want to change what the definition of a rich life is. We want to change what the definition of a wealthy life is. Because ultimately, when your definition, what you've been made to think, is people living paycheck to paycheck just so they can feed the world, we have a problem. So again, the three parts is the impact, the legacy, and creating the rich life. That's what we're doing here. That's what I'm doing with MoneyFitMD. And depending on when you listen to this podcast, my 8 weeks money school for badass women physicians is going to be starting at some point this fall. I run that about 2 to 3 times a year. And this is exactly what I created that to be, to help women physicians create their life of impact, create their legacy, and create their definition of a rich life without burning out. That's what I'm inviting you to. And I'm going to be putting some link in the comments. So depending on when you listen to this, it may be enrolling, we may be complete, we may be in the middle. But anyways, the bottom line is you can create your definition of a rich life. And I invite you to be a part of this movement that we are creating in MoneyFit MD. Again, it's been a pleasure. Always such an honor spending time with you. And I will see you in the next episode. All right, goodbye.